All right, 111 folks, I'm going to see if I can get through this again without stumbling over my own words. What's important about this is I want to talk a little bit about Egypt. And Egypt, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of periods. So we have in our studies invented three distinct periods. We've invented or created what we call the Old Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the New Kingdom. We've got them divided up in chronological areas, but also there is what we call intercessory periods. The intercessory periods are the lapses. They're intermediate periods. What I want to do is I want to go ahead and use this link I've got posted in the class to go ahead and look at what we're talking about. So if you click on that link, you'll see that it has the Old Kingdom, and the Old Kingdom is going to be the foundation of what we think of Egypt itself. Egypt, the kingdoms are going to be centered between upper and lower. They're going to be united by an important guy named Narmer. Narmer, and you can find the Narmer palette. And the Narmer palette shows his conquering of Upper and Lower Egypt, his unification of the two to create the unified kingdom of Egypt, and his adoption of his pharaoh name, Menes, Menes. And Menes is going to rule over the unified Egypt. And this is important because most of what we know about Egypt is a couple of different things. We know it is centered on the Nile. That's the lifeblood. It's called the Black Lands, and it's not because of the color of the people, but it's because of the color of the deep, dark, rich soil. And the thing about Egypt is it's protected. It's not at war like Mesopotamia is. It's going to rise the same way Mesopotamia does. They're going to develop some of the same technology. What's interesting is technology is based on climate and challenges. So they're not going to develop the wheel as early as Mesopotamia does, but they are going to develop some different things. What you have to know is that on the Nile, they're protected. They've got mountains on one side, they've got desert on the other side. Up the Nile, they've got some cataracts and waterfalls. Down the Nile, they've got another set of cataracts and waterfalls. And so it's harder to invade. Because it's harder to invade, they don't have a standing army to begin with. Most people think, gosh, standing army in Egypt, a magnificent army. No, that's not it. They don't have a standing army. We start off in the Old Kingdom. That's the very first one, is the Old Kingdom. And what we know is this, is life in Egypt is more predictable. Where Mesopotamia suffers from flooding and arid conditions, well, yeah, the same is true in Egypt, but the flooding is predictable. And so they know, listen, this time of year it's going to be arid. We're going to have to go ahead and irrigate. This time of year, hey, it's going to pour rain and it's going to flood. And then the next stage is it's going to recede. So they can predict when it's going to flood. They can predict reasonably when it's going to recede, and they can plant. So therefore, they know when planting is going to be available, when harvesting is going to be available, and what they're going to do is arrange other projects, other things to do. And so we have the same type of culture. We're still looking at feeding people. We're still looking at evolving. We're still looking at expanding trade. They're trading up and down the Nile. They're trading with Mesopotamia. They're going to be trading with Israel. They're going to be trading with all the other areas to begin with. But they're a little bit more sheltered and protected. What you have to know about this is this version of Egypt is where the pharaohs and their pyramids come from. This is Pyramid Egypt. And one of the more famous pharaohs is going to be Zoser, right? Zoser. And Zoser is important because he is going to commission the first pyramid, the step pyramid of Zoser, and it's going to be designed and built by an architect called Imhotep. And this is important because from here, we see an enlarging of pyramids. We see a continuation of pyramids to the point that, listen, as soon as you become pharaoh, you start building your pyramid. Pyramids are going to be bigger. Pyramids are going to be broader. Pyramids aren't just pyramids. They're a temple complex. They're a funeral complex that goes with them. And so we expand from there. And if you look, you can see that there's going to be later the three great pyramids, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. And those three pyramids are what people think of as the great pyramids of Egypt because they're the largest and most majestic. But here's the issue. people build them. They're not built by Hebrew slaves. Hebrew slaves don't exist at this point, and that character in Egypt who is building them are going to be the workers. There are people that are professional stonemasons. There are people that are professional pyramid builders. But also you're looking at farmers. At certain times of year, when it's flooded, farmers can't work in the fields. They need their grain. They need their food. So they're going to work in the pyramid structures to go ahead and do that. Now, what's going to happen is these pyramids are going to bankrupt Egypt. They're going to bankrupt Egypt because they're horribly expensive. They take lots of years, but the thing is they're a focal point. They're a focal point of religion. They're a focal point of burial to properly revere the pharaohs, because the pharaohs are god kings. And so what will happen is you're going to find that the pharaohs and the pyramids are going to be propped up by the priests and the culture. The problem is eventually you're going to see the downfall. And the downfall is going to be the overextension of money, the overextension of cost to build these pyramids. And what will happen is you're going to see an uprising by the nobles, and they're going to cast off the pharaohs. And so what you look at is you look at this first intercessory period. You look at the first break between the two, between the kingdoms. An intermediate period is when the pharaohs are no longer in power. It's still Egypt, but the pharaohs are no longer in power. Okay, and so we look at this first intermediate period when the nobles will be back in power, and then eventually what will happen is the pharaohs are going to regain power. When the pharaohs regain power after that first intermediate period, well, that is going to be the Middle Kingdom. And so what I want to do is I want to talk about the Middle Kingdom real quick, and I will pick up from there.